I'll write the first part of your story in about 800 words using simple English, third-person style, with Korean names as requested. The stars looked peaceful from the observation deck of the Assembly's main station. Commander Hanul stared at the projection map showing hundreds of worlds connected by trade routes. The blue lights represented safe planets. The red ones showed those already lost. There were too many red lights now. "Another colony gone," said Science Officer Yoonji, entering the room quietly. Her usual neat uniform looked wrinkled and dark circles had formed under her eyes. No one in the Assembly fleet had slept well since the attacks began. Hanul nodded without turning. "How many dead?" 8 million. The Vox didn't leave anyone alive, not even children. Hanul's fists tightened. The Vox had appeared 6 months ago from the outer edges of known space. No one knew what they wanted. They didn't talk or make demands. They simply attacked, destroyed, and moved on to the next world. "The Council wants an update," Yoonji said. "They're waiting in the command center." Hanul took a deep breath and followed her through the curved hallways of the station. The Assembly had existed for 10,000 years. 27 different species lived together in peace, sharing technology and resources. They had forgotten what war really meant. Until now. The command center buzzed with activity. Officers from different species worked at control panels, monitoring the movements of the Vox fleet. In the center, the High Council members stood around a large table. "Commander," said Councillor Dae-ho, his tall, thin body bending slightly in greeting. "We need good news." "I don't have any," Hanul replied honestly. "The Vox destroyed our forces at Proxima Colony. We lost 30 ships." "How?" asked another councillor, her scales changing color with distress. "You said our new shield technology would work." "It did, for about 10 minutes. Then the Vox adapted. They always adapt." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. The Assembly's greatest strength had always been its technology, but against the Vox, technology wasn't enough. "Show us the battle," Dae-ho ordered. Hanul nodded to a technician who loaded the recording onto the main screen. The Assembly ships moved in perfect formation, their blue shields glowing as they engaged the crystal-like Vox vessels. For a few moments, the battle seemed even. Then the Vox ships changed their attack pattern, firing strange energy beams that slowly drained the shields. "They analyzed our defense and found its weakness," Hanul explained. "They do this every time. No matter what new technology we use, they adapt within minutes." "It's like they can predict our every move," Yoonji added. "Our tactics follow logical patterns based on thousands of years of strategic development. But the Vox seem to understand these patterns better than we do." As the council members watched the recording in silence, a young diplomat named Jin Woo entered the room. He wasn't supposed to be in high-level meetings, but no one stopped him. Normal rules didn't seem to matter anymore. "I might have found something," Jin Woo said quietly. "In the ancient records." Dae-ho looked at him with tired eyes. "What records?" "From the early days of space exploration, before the Assembly was fully formed." Jin Woo pulled up files on his datapad. "There was a species the founders encountered. They weren't invited to join the Assembly." "Why not?" asked Hanul, suddenly interested. "They were deemed too dangerous, not because of their weapons or technology, which were actually quite primitive, but because of their minds." Jinwoo displayed an image of a planet with vast blue oceans and green landmasses. "They're called humans." Yoonji frowned. "I've never heard of them." "They've been under quarantine for over a century," Jinwoo explained. "Initial contact revealed disturbing traits. Their history contained thousands of wars against themselves. While most species evolved past internal conflict before achieving space travel, these humans continued fighting each other, even as they explored their own solar system." "And this helps us how?" Dae-ho asked impatiently. Jinwoo looked directly at the council members. The reports described humans as unpredictable and evolutionarily designed for warfare. They make decisions that don't follow logical patterns. They take unnecessary risks. They sacrifice themselves for abstract concepts, Hanul suddenly understood. If the Vox can predict our logical tactics, then maybe they can't predict illogical ones, Jinwoo finished. Humans might be the only species whose thinking the Vox can't easily analyze. The council members exchanged worried glances. Contacting a quarantined species was strictly forbidden, but so was losing the entire galaxy to the Vox. "Where is this planet?" Deho finally asked. Jinwoo pulled up the coordinates on the main screen. "They call it Earth." Hanul looked at the small blue planet on the display. It didn't look like much, but if what Jinwoo said was true, these humans might be their last hope. "Prepare a ship," Deho ordered. "We're going to break quarantine." The sleek diplomatic vessel glided through Earth's atmosphere, its adaptive hull shimmering in the morning sunlight. Captain Sunmi stood at the command center, watching the blue planet grow larger through the viewscreen. She had studied the reports about humans, but seeing their world firsthand made her nervous. "Are you certain about this?" asked Navigator Giho. "The quarantine has been in place for over a century," Sunmi nodded. "We have no choice. The Vox destroyed 3 more systems while we traveled here. The ship landed in an open field outside a city humans called Geneva. The landing site was surrounded by human security forces in simple vehicles and uniforms. Sunmi noticed they carried primitive projectile weapons, technology the assembly had abandoned thousands of years ago. "Remember," Sunmi told her crew, as the landing ramp extended, "humans are unpredictable. Don't make sudden movements, don't show fear." The air felt heavy as Sunmi led her delegation down the ramp. 5 humans waited for them, standing straight and still. 4 wore dark uniforms, with colorful patches on their shoulders. The 5th, a woman in the center, wore a simple gray suit. "Welcome to Earth," the woman said. "I'm Director Bitnar of the Earth Defense Force." Sunmi bowed slightly. "Thank you for agreeing to meet us. I am Captain Sunmi of the Galactic Assembly." The humans led them to a nearby building where a larger group waited in a conference room. Sunmi noticed how different humans looked from one another, varying in skin color, size, and features, unlike most species who shared more uniform appearances. General Tae Yang, a broad-shouldered man with short gray hair, spoke first after introductions. "Let's be direct. You quarantined us for a century, and now you want our help. Why?" Sunmi activated a holographic projector showing the Vox attacks. "This threat has destroyed 17 worlds in 6 months. Nothing we've tried has worked against them." "And you think we can help?" asked a younger human named Kyu-won. "Our technology is far behind yours." "It's not your technology we need," Sunmi explained. "It's how you think." The room grew quiet. Sunmi continued, showing battle footage of assembly fleets being systematically destroyed by the Vox. "They predict our tactics perfectly," she said. "They analyze patterns and adapt immediately. The assembly has followed logical, predictable, strategic development for millennia. But humans, we're unpredictable," finished Director Bitnar. "That's why you quarantined us in the first place." Sunmi nodded. "Your species has fought thousands of wars against itself. Most advanced civilizations evolved past internal conflict before achieving spaceflight. You're saying our violence is now an advantage?" General Taeyang looked surprised. "Your unpredictability is the advantage," corrected Sunmi. "Humans make choices that defy calculation. You take risks no logical species would consider. You sacrifice short-term gains for long-term goals. You use deception and misdirection." Taeyang smiled slightly. "We call that creativity." The meeting continued for hours. Sunmi shared everything the assembly knew about the Vox, their crystalline ships, their adaptive technology, their perfect formations. The humans asked questions no assembly member would have considered, looking for weaknesses where none seemed to exist. "Have you tried illogical attacks?" asked Q1. "Doing something that makes no strategic sense?" Sunmi blinked in confusion. "Why would we do that?" "Because they wouldn't expect it," Taeyang explained. "If they predict based on logical patterns, then the solution is to be illogical." After the meeting, Earth's leaders debated among themselves. Sunmi waited anxiously outside the room with her crew. "They might refuse," said Navigator Giho. "We isolated them for a century. Why should they help us?" "Because that's another strange thing about humans," replied Sunmi. "They often help even when there's nothing to gain." When the doors opened, Director Bitnar approached with General Tae Yang and several others. "We'll help you," Bitnar said. "Not because we've forgotten the quarantine, but because no species deserves what the Vox are doing." "Thank you," Sunmi said, feeling genuine relief. "Don't thank us yet," Tae Yang replied. First, we need to see how your ships work. Then we need to change everything about how you fight. As they walked toward the landing field, Sunmi noticed a group of human children watching from a distance, pointing at her crew with excitement rather than fear. One question, Sunmi asked. Why are you willing to help after how we treated your species? Director Bittner looked at the children, then back at Sunmi. Because proving you wrong about us is worth more than holding a grudge. You thought our unpredictability made us dangerous. Now we'll show you it makes us valuable. For the first time since the Vox appeared, Sunmi felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. The massive assembly battleship hovered near the edge of the Sirius system. Inside, Admiral Do-Yun studied the tactical display showing the approaching Vox fleet. 30 crystalline ships moved in perfect formation, their patterns shifting with mathematical precision. They'll reach the outpost in 2 hours, reported Lieutenant Ju-won. 5,000 civilians are still being evacuated. Do-Yun nodded, his face calm despite the pressure. 3 weeks had passed since the humans joined the fight against the Vox. In that time, they had studied every battle recording, learning how the Vox thought and adapted. Assemble the commanders, Do-Yun ordered. Soon the command center filled with both human officers and assembly captains. The two groups still looked uncomfortable around each other. Centuries of separation had left marks on both sides. The Vox expect us to defend the outpost using standard assembly formations, Do-Yun explained, pointing to the display. They've already adapted to our shield technology and weapons. So what's the plan? Asked Assembly Captain Myung-dae. Our ships cannot outrun them. Do-Yun smiled slightly. We won't run, and we won't fight conventionally. He outlined his strategy, watching the assembly officers' faces shift from confusion to shock. That's suicide, Myung-dae finally said. You want to deliberately damage our own ships? 3 ships, Do-Yun corrected. We'll trigger controlled radiation leaks in the engine cores, not enough to destroy the ships, but enough to create a chaotic electromagnetic field. The Vox won't expect it, added Lieutenant Ju-won. Their sensors will be confused. And then 5 more ships will power down completely, continued Do-Yun. They'll appear dead in space. An assembly engineer named Tai-hee shook her head. This is madness. You're sacrificing 8 ships. No, Do-Yun said firmly. We're creating an opportunity. When the Vox move in to investigate, they'll believe we've suffered a catastrophic failure. That's when our remaining ships will attack from multiple vectors. With what? Asked Captain Myung-dae. They've adapted to all our weapons. Do-Yun nodded to Ju-won, who activated another display showing modified weapon systems. With these, we've reversed-engineered some of Earth's older weapons, kinetic projectiles, nuclear warheads, even electromagnetic pulse generators. The Vox have never encountered them because they're too primitive for the assembly to use in modern warfare. Sometimes the old ways work best, Ju-won added with a grin. The assembly officers looked skeptical, but they had no better ideas. The Vox had defeated every logical strategy they'd tried. 2 hours later, the battle began. 3 assembly cruisers moved forward, seemingly preparing for a standard defensive formation. Then, without warning, their engines flared brightly, releasing controlled bursts of radiation. Meanwhile, 5 more ships powered down all systems, drifting lifelessly. From the command center, Do-Yun watched the Vox fleet hesitate for the first time. Their perfect formation wavered as they processed this unexpected development. They're confused, Ju-won reported, monitoring the Vox communications. They can't determine if this is a trap or a genuine malfunction. Now, ordered Do-Yun. The remaining ships suddenly accelerated from hiding positions behind nearby asteroids. Instead of using their advanced energy weapons, they launched primitive missiles carrying nuclear warheads and dense metal projectiles. The Vox shields designed to stop energy beams failed against these physical objects. Meanwhile, the supposedly dead ships powered up again, launching electromagnetic pulses that disrupted the Vox communication systems. "It's working," shouted Tai-hee in amazement. "They can't coordinate their defenses." On the main communication channel, a transmission from the Vox commander suddenly appeared. The crystalline being looked directly at Do-Yun with its faceted eyes. "Impossible," the Vox said, its translated voice sounding confused. Your tactics are illogical. You damage your own forces. You use inferior weapons. This defies strategic principles. That's the point, Do Yun replied before cutting the communication. The battle continued for another hour. For the first time, the Vox ships began to retreat, unable to predict what the humans would do next. When they tried to adapt to one tactic, the humans would switch to something completely different. After the last Vox ship jumped to light speed, the command center erupted in cheers. Assembly officers embraced their human counterparts, previous tensions forgotten in the joy of victory. "How did you know it would work?" Captain Myung-dae asked Do Yun. "I didn't," the admiral admitted. "That's what the Vox couldn't understand. We took a chance. Sometimes you have to embrace uncertainty to find success." As they began rescue operations for the damaged ships, Do Yun knew this was just the beginning. The Vox would return, stronger and more adapted. But now they faced an enemy they couldn't predict, an enemy who understood that sometimes the most logical choice was to be completely illogical. The assembly science vessel orbited Earth, its laboratories filled with humans and aliens working side by side. Researcher Mi-suk peered through a microscope-like device at brain tissue samples. After weeks of studying human neurology, she still found their minds fascinating and strange. "Have you found anything new?" asked Lieutenant Ju-won, entering the lab. His uniform showed signs of recent battle, a small tear in the sleeve, scorch marks along one side. Mi-suk looked up from her work. "Yes, actually. Come see this." On her screen, two brain scans glowed side by side. One showed the organized, efficient neural pathways of an assembly species. The other, human, appeared chaotic, with connections jumping between regions in patterns that seemed random. "We've discovered what we're calling quantum uncertainty in human decision-making," Mi-suk explained. "When faced with identical situations multiple times, humans often make different choices." Ju-won smiled. "We call it taking risks. Sometimes you have to gamble." "But there's no logical reason for it," Mi-suk insisted. "Your brains appear designed to create unpredictable outcomes." "Maybe that's the point," Ju-won suggested. "Predictability is a weakness against enemies like the Vox." The conversation paused as the ship's communication system chimed. Admiral Do Yun's face appeared on the main screen. "Lieutenant, we need you in Strategy Room 3. We're planning the next offensive." 3 hours later, assembly officers watched in stunned silence as human commanders outlined their newest tactics. Since the victory at Sirius, human-led forces had pushed the Vox back from 6 systems. Each battle used completely different approaches. "You want to use planetary gravity wells as weapons?" asked Captain Hoon-jae, looking concerned. "By dropping ships out of light speed precisely at the edge?" "Yes," confirmed Ju-won. "The gravitational slingshot effect will accelerate our smaller fighters, beyond what their engines could achieve alone." "The timing would need to be perfect," cautioned Hoon-jae. "One mistake and the ships would be crushed." "Our pilots can do it," Ju-won said confidently. "We've been practicing in simulations." In another meeting room, technical experts discussed even stranger ideas. Engineer Young-min presented a virus designed to infiltrate Vox communication systems. "Instead of destroying their networks," he explained, "this code inserts random poetry into their tactical orders. It won't shut them down, it'll confuse them." "Poetry?" repeated an assembly technician. "As a weapon?" "Unpredictability is our advantage," Young-min said. "They expect either function or malfunction, not creative dysfunction." As these plans moved forward, not everyone in the assembly felt comfortable with the human approach. In a private council meeting, several officials raised concerns. "The humans are winning battles, yes," said Councillor Sang-hoon, "but their methods are reckless. They take unnecessary risks." "They're effective," countered Admiral Won-shik. "The Vox have retreated from 3 sectors already." "That's not my concern," Sang-hoon said quietly. "If humans are this effective against the Vox, what happens when they turn against us? Their unpredictability makes them dangerous allies." The room fell silent as Earth Ambassador Yoon-hee entered. Though she hadn't been invited to the meeting, no one stopped her. "I couldn't help overhearing your concerns," she said calmly. "May I speak?" Admiral Won-shik nodded. "You fear our unpredictability because you don't understand its source," Yoon-hee explained. You think we fight well because we're naturally violent, but that's not true. She activated a display showing human history, not the wars the Assembly had focused on, but what came after: rebuilding, healing, cooperation. Humans fight hardest when protecting others, she continued. Yes, we've had many wars among ourselves, but we've learned from them. You've given us something we never had before, a galaxy of people to protect instead of fight. Sang-hoon looked unconvinced. Pretty words, Ambassador, but history suggests we evolve, Yoon-hee interrupted. A century ago, we fought over land and resources. Now we fight to save lives, including yours. Later that night, Mi-suk continued her research. The latest scans showed something remarkable. When humans fought to protect others, their neural patterns changed. The chaos became purposeful, directed chaos. Fascinating, she whispered. They're not just random, they're adaptively unpredictable. As if to prove her point, reports came in from the front lines. Human forces had broken through Vox defenses using sound frequencies that disrupted their crystalline structures, a tactic no logical species would have considered. Another fleet had painted their ships with reflective patterns that confused Vox targeting systems. The Vox were retreating across all fronts, unable to counter an enemy whose next move they couldn't predict. The massive human assembly fleet surrounded the Vox homeworld. Hundreds of ships formed a blockade, their weapons ready. After months of battles across the galaxy, they had finally pushed the Vox back to their origin point. This crystalline planet with its sharp mountains and deep valleys had given birth to the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever known. Admiral Do-yun stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking at the view screen. Behind him, assembly officials waited nervously. They expected the final battle, a decisive strike to end the Vox threat forever. "Launch the attack," urged General Kaite, one of the Assembly's oldest military leaders. "We can end this now." Do-yun remained silent, studying the planet below. The Vox had killed billions. They had shown no mercy, no desire for communication. Logic dictated they should be destroyed completely. But humans had not risen to lead this war by following logic. "Open." "A communication channel," Do-yun said finally. The bridge crew stared at him in shock. Even the human officers looked surprised. "Admiral," asked his communications officer, Ji-hoo, "are you sure?" "Yes, on all frequencies. I want to speak directly to the Vox hive mind." As the channel opened, the main screen flickered. A crystalline face appeared, its faceted eyes reflecting the light in strange patterns. This was the first time anyone had seen the actual form of the Vox leadership. "You have reached our world," the hive mind stated flatly. "Your victory is incomplete. We still possess weapons capable of destroying your fleet." "I know," Do-yun replied calmly, "but I'm not here to continue our war. I'm here to end it." The hive mind's crystal face shifted slightly. "Clarify." "We offer you peace," Do-yun said, "not because we cannot defeat you, but because we choose not to." The assembly officials whispered among themselves, clearly uncomfortable with this approach. They had expected vengeance, not mercy. "Your offer is illogical," the hive mind responded after a long pause. "We have destroyed 17 of your worlds. You should seek our extinction." "That would be the logical response," agreed Do-yun. "But humans aren't always logical. We can choose to break patterns. Today, we choose peace over victory." "Your species defies prediction," the hive mind said. "We cannot calculate your true intention." "That's what makes us human," Do-yun replied. The admiral explained the terms. The Vox would return to their homeworld, help rebuild the worlds they had damaged, and join the assembly as a member species rather than its enemy. "And if we refuse?" asked the hive mind. Do-yun's expression hardened slightly. "Then we finish this war, but I don't think you want that. You've never encountered an enemy you couldn't predict before. You've never lost. Now you have. Aren't you curious about what else you might learn from us?" Hours passed as the Vox considered the offer. The assembly officials argued with Do-yun, many believing this mercy was a mistake, but the human officers stood united behind their admiral. Finally, the hive mind responded. "We accept your terms. The Vox will cease all hostile actions." 1 year later, Ambassador Yunhee walked through the new assembly headquarters on Earth. The building combined architectural styles from all member species, including a new crystalline wing designed by Vox engineers. After centuries of conquest, the Vox had discovered something new: cooperation. Assembly chair. Minho fell into step beside her as she entered the main hall. "The integration is proceeding faster than expected," he said. 6 former Vox warships have been converted to research vessels. Yunhee nodded. "They learn quickly when they choose to." "A trait they share with humans," Minho observed. "The galaxy has changed more in the past year than in the 1,000 years before, thanks to you." They stopped at a window overlooking a garden where children from different species played together. Among them were human and Vox children, the latter's crystalline forms catching the sunlight. "Will humans ever stop being warriors?" Minho asked quietly. Yunhee watched the children. "We already have," she replied. "We're not fighters, we're protectors, and there's a universe of difference between the two." In classrooms across the galaxy, young assembly members now studied the human paradox, how the most unpredictable species had become the greatest peacekeepers, how creativity and compassion had proven stronger than logic alone. The Vox had been the terror of the galaxy until humans were called in. Not because humans were better warriors, but because they understood that true strength comes from knowing when not to fight. And as ships from Earth traveled to distant stars, carrying human diplomats and explorers, the galaxy discovered what humanity had learned through its long, troubled history: that unpredictability, when guided by compassion, could create something neither humans nor the assembly had ever fully achieved before.